YouTube. Get that started. All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to our kickoff event for Women's History Month, and especially on International Women's Day. So we're excited for the first in our series of conversations with women who are just doing a lot of great things in our community, and who have done a lot of great things here at Murray State. And today we are joined by Dr. Bonnie Higginson, who has done just about all there is to do at Murray State, I think. And we're looking forward to hearing about that. So to kick us off, Dr. Higginson, could you please kind of just tell us about all of the many ways that you have gotten to lead and be a part of this campus?
Well, first of all, I am so happy to be with you all, to see familiar faces and unfamiliar faces. I wish we were all together in person so I could meet everyone, but it is really a pleasure to be with you today. I'm really dating myself, and I promise not to go into great detail because I have almost 50 years of history with Murray State, starting as a student back in 1972. And then I think I had so much fun as a student at the university that I decided I didn't want to leave, even though I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have a planned career path. And quite honestly, everything that happened to me, every leadership position I had and change I had, wasn't really planned. It was, things just sort of moved along, and opportunities presented themselves, and I worked with so many great people that I couldn't have envisioned in 1972 that I would spend my entire career at Murray State and that I would have had so many opportunities. But essentially, I started out as a secretary, and we called administrative assistant secretaries then, and I wasn't very good at it. This was before computers, and I was just not a very good secretary, but I started working on my master's degree, had an opportunity to work and teach in what was then called the Learning Center. It was the developmental studies program for underprepared students coming into the university. So I taught reading and study skills classes for about 10 years. And in the meantime, was able to go to the University of Georgia in summers. And then I spent a year there to work on my PhD in reading education. Soon after I finished, a couple of years after I finished my PhD, I had a chance to move into the College of Education into a tenure track teaching position in the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so I did that, loved teaching both graduate and undergraduate students. And in 1996, had a chance to serve as the department chair for 4 years. During that time, the residential college system started in 1996. And in 2000, I became head of White College. And I did that for 7 years, and that remains really the favorite part of my career for lots of reasons. And so I did do that for 7 years, and then there was an opportunity to move into the provost office as associate provost for undergraduate programs. I was able to obtain that position, worked in that position for 3 years, and then Dr. Gary Brockway, who was the provost at the time, decided to retire. And so from 2010 to 2013, I served as provost. Then I retired and went back to the College of Education and Human Services on a half-time basis, where I taught and did some administrative work until a couple of years ago. Kind of a long story, lots of changes. About every 6-7 years, something else would come along, and I would take it on.
Yes. And I remember when I was a graduate student, I don't know if you remember, but I worked for Kathy Garrison over in graduate
do.
admissions. And so at one time we reported to you, I think. And so I got to see your name quite often on emails and files and papers and things like that. So all kinds of connections. And I had sort of a similar experience. I did my undergrad here, got my master's here, started working here, and never would have thought at the beginning that I, would still be at Murray State. So I just, so, that resonates with me, your story and your journey there. So when you look back on all of those experiences, and I know you've kind of alluded to a little bit some of your favorite memories, but what are some of the challenges that you faced in leading, and how did you work through and overcome those challenges?
I think the challenges I faced were within myself more than anything else. Probably the biggest challenge was that I would have, as I thought about moving into a different position, I lacked some confidence. I would go, can I really do this? Can I handle that? There would be some aspect of that position, whether it was budget kinds of things. Budgetary matters were not my forte. And so I was always afraid of that, of having to handle a budget and make budgetary decisions. So it was kind of this insecurity that I had to face throughout my career. And now I kind of look back on it and I think that actually helped me because it made me aware of what I did need to work on, the kinds of things I needed to learn. And I think it made me work harder, where if I had been overly confident and, just thought, oh, I can do this, it's no big deal, I'm not sure that I would have been as effective.
I know a lot of people have, those same types of insecurities and things like that, taking on something new. I know that I have. So when you were sort of contemplating taking on those new roles and dealing with those feelings of, can I do this? Am I ready for this? How do you think you pushed past that? What do you think helped you to push past that?
I think as much as anything, other people helped me push past it, where first of all, my husband would say, you can do this, you would be good at it. And he would encourage me, but also people like Don Robertson, he just always believed in me and encouraged me. And so having people on campus who would say, you should do that, I think you'd be good at it. I think you're the one that should be in that position, helped me develop some confidence. And I go, well, maybe I can do it after all.
So for you having that community, having that support, so it sounds like, maybe something important to take away from this is having that support system within your professional role, whatever that is, and developing sort of that community that encourages you in those moments. Did you have any experiences that really forged that type of relationship with others? Were you part of any groups, or were you part of any types of initiatives that helped to create that?
That's a good question. We had several programs through the years to help develop leaders that would meet. I'm trying to, and now I'm forgetting the exact name of those programs, but it was to bring in newer or younger faculty and staff who were interested in leadership positions, and to meet periodically and help them understand what is it that department chairs do? What is it that program directors do? What does the budget process look like at Murray State? How is Murray State structured administratively? And so we had those programs, but I think over the years, and there may be something going on now that I'm not aware of, but I know they were always subject to budget cuts. They weren't really expensive programs. Typically, they'd involve lunch and seminars and maybe bringing in speakers from outside of the university. But as the budget got tighter and tighter through the years, those programs kind of went by the wayside. I think they were really helpful to people.
So we've got some students who are live with us and some students who are maybe listening through YouTube. What would be sort of your advice to them as students in building that network? What would you tell them about having that support?
I think it's important to, first of all, look at the leaders around you and get to know them and find out as much as you can about, particularly the leaders that you find to be very impactful and effective. What is it they're doing, and how can you start to work with that person or with those people to kind of develop those leadership skills? You don't want to be just exactly like someone else, but to seek out those people, watch them, get to know them, and talk about what you hope to do and help those leaders foster your own leadership.
So those were some challenges, but I'm sure you also had many successes and just many things that you look back on as just sort of shining bright moments in your career. So would you mind to share some of those with us?
Sure. I think the first one, and it might be obvious by what I said earlier. I think my most successful leadership was when I was a college head. And that was also the one with perhaps the biggest learning curve in a sense, because I had been, and I think any college heads listening in on this may be able to relate to the situation. I've been in the classroom. When you're in the classroom, you're kind of in charge. You're the one who determines the grades. You're sort of in control. I had been an administrator and sort of the same thing, in control, being the leader of a department. What I had to realize when I became a college head was that it required a totally different kind of leadership, that the students owned the college. The students owned the residential college and what it can be, what they wanted it to be, not the college head. So in that first year, I came to realize, what I have to do is just sort of plant the seed for something, instead of saying, hey, we're gonna do this program, or we're going to organize this group, or whatever it was. I just had to plant the seed, and nearly always one or more students would take hold of that and say, yeah, let's go with that. But I didn't have to force it on them. So it was much more of a facilitative leadership role. And I felt in those 7 years that I grew a great deal as a leader because of that type of leadership. And I still keep in touch with quite a few of the students who were involved in White College at the time. And, I kind of feel like their mom because we spent so much time together, but they became really good leaders too. And it makes me happy and makes me feel satisfied about that experience.
You bring up a really great point about just being able to adapt to the type of leadership that's needed. And I think that for a lot of us, that can be difficult to be able to read the room, so to speak, and figure out how to change our leadership style. What advice would you give to maybe professionals that are listening, or even students who are preparing to go into the workplace? Like, how would you advise them to figure out how to make those changes and adapt?
Let's see. Probably several things that are, that kind of maybe stray a little bit from the question. But one, the first thing I learned in college, I think, as an undergraduate, and I was part of a sorority, an organization, and I learned to listen and to try to figure things out, and not to. There were times when I wanted to jump in and say, "Well, I think we should do it this way," or "I don't like that idea." But I just learned to figure out the dynamics and listen. And I think that helped me as a leader in every position. Every time I made a change, I would do a lot of listening to my boss, whoever that person was, as well as to the people I was working with and the people I was supervising, to try to determine what kind of leadership was needed at that point. I think, and this is sort of something that everyone says, but I'll say it anyway, communication is so critical. Almost every failure of an organization can be traced back to some communication problem. And I think we learned that the hard way. And I know I was far from perfect in the area of communication, but I think it's really important when you do get a leadership position to make sure that as you're working with people or people that you're supervising, that you communicate your expectations or the group's expectations very clearly, set the boundaries or the deadline, because I see so often that things fall through the cracks. I'm in an organization now that is a really good, long-standing, almost 100-year-old group here in Murray, and it's kind of struggling partly because of the pandemic, but things didn't happen over the past year, and there can be this tendency to just, well, that's got to be somebody's fault. But what it boils down to is communication, that it's everybody's fault in a sense, that communication just wasn't effective. And I think also I talked about observing good leaders and people you admire and respect. I think it's also important to observe the qualities of bad leaders. I may have learned more from the people who I consider to be poor leaders than I did from the good ones, because I would be able to say, ooh, I never want to do that. I never want to try it that way or handle a situation that way. So, not that there are any bad leaders at Murray State, or, but there are folks who are better than others, and there are people you can encounter who just haven't developed those leadership skills yet, and watch for those things and watch how you can. If you find yourself in a position, how you can learn from that and do it better.
And you mentioned that you were in a sorority, and that you learned some things through that. And Murray State, just like most universities, we offer so many opportunities for students to take on leadership roles, whether it's SGA or Black Student Council or Greek Life or in housing with RCA and being an RA and all those types of things. Why do you think it's so important that students experience those types of roles while they're in school? And how does that prepare them for when they get out into their career?
Great question. I think, first of all, it helps with organizational skills. I know it helped me a great deal. You have to learn to juggle a number of responsibilities with your classes, your social life, and your obligations, your leadership obligations. And so I think it helped me. I think I became a pretty organized leader from the point of leading the sorority I belonged to, because I remember having list after list after list of things to do. And I would go through the day and check things off, and it would include school and the leadership position and other things, so I think it can really help with organizational skills. I think it also helps you develop confidence, as well as helping you to learn or to recognize the areas that need improvement, and to seek out ways to improve those areas before you wind up, say, in a leadership position where millions of dollars are involved, or where you're having to determine the future of employees. So, figuring out those things as an undergraduate or a graduate student can really make a big difference in the long run when you find yourself in leadership roles later on.
And I think, with so many of the students who have taken on those roles here on campus, they would probably say those same things, that those leadership roles have helped to prepare them for the future. So before we let some of the students ask questions that they may have, is there anything that you would say specifically to women who are considering leading? This is International Women's Day and Women's History Month, and we are thinking about women leading. Is there anything that you would say to women about just the importance of taking that leap, taking on those roles, taking those opportunities?
Well, of course, I would say go for it. I think I would also say, I thought about this a few days ago. Everyone, male or female, can receive negative messaging from other people. It may be a bit more common for females. And so I'm going to tell a little story about 3 times that I had negative messaging. 2 of those times from other females. And the first was when I was in high school, graduated from high school, and my guidance counselor looked at my transcript and she said, you didn't take chemistry. You will never make it through college. And I was a first generation college student, and that really scared me. But it also made me think, well, I'll show her. I'll make it through college. And I'm embarrassed to say to any chemistry folks out there, I never did take chemistry, not in high school, not in college. I wish I had. I wish I knew more about chemistry, but that was a really negative message that could have discouraged me from pursuing a degree. The second one was from my first boss at Murray State. And I was pretty young, early 20s, wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And one day she said to me, well, I think you should just go home and have babies. Not that that's a bad thing to do, but that was not what I had in mind. That was not the message that I wanted to receive from her. And that one made me think, no, that's not really what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out something else. And that's what I did. And then the third one was when I was working on my doctorate, and I was going back and forth from Murray to the University of Georgia. And it was not an easy time. That went on for about 4 years. And one day someone said to me, it will never be worth it. I don't know why you're doing this. It will never be worth it. Well, it was worth it from day one after finishing the doctorate. So I am saying to everyone, but particularly females, don't let those negative messages, let them inspire you and make you fight more for what you want. Don't let them defeat you.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
So we're going to let our participants that are here with us ask any questions that they might have, or make any comments that they might have. You can do that through the chat if you would like. You can unmute yourself and do that if you would like to. So we'll let people interact a little bit if they would like to.
Dr. Higginson, hi.
Hi.
Question for you.
Casey.
Hello. When you were college head over in White, what were some strategies that you found were most effective in getting students involved in the community and even stepping into those leadership positions? And how do you go about recognizing that potential in those students?
One thing I did, and it was very time consuming, but it was worth it. I tried to meet with every new student at the beginning of the fall semester. Of course, that would, it would be difficult under the circumstances we have right now. But back then, I would meet, and it would only be, because there were, a few hundred, it would only be a 10-minute meeting, but it allowed me to do several things. It allowed me to associate a name with a face, to let the student know what the residential college system is about and what my role was, and to let them know that if they needed help to come to me, and to find out what their interests were, and to kind of tap into that. So I would take notes, and then the residential college council people and the RAs would get together, and we were able to say, hey, here's somebody who's really interested in going to Land Between the Lakes, outdoors things. So maybe we can plan some kind of excursion at LBL. Here's someone who's really interested in playing volleyball for White College. And so we were able to kind of tap into that, because we sort of realized that sometimes just putting a sign up or sending an email doesn't bring good results. So it was kind of that personal touch, I think. We also, I had such good students to work with, but we also tried to do a lot of different types of programming. We had a lot of international students in White College in the early 2000s. And so we would focus, we were sort of known as the International Student College. We would have a lot of programs so that students could get to know one another and learn about other cultures. And that was very successful. So we tried to tap into the population of people, not just living in the hall, but also the commuter students. But the reality was it was more the people living there and getting them involved, making them feel welcomed into the college by doing programs related to their interests.
Wonderful, thank you.
We have a question in our chat that I'll summarize a bit, but it's just basically asking, how do you maybe win over a boss or a supervisor who doesn't value your work, or maybe doesn't value the idea that women can do just as many things, if not more, than men? So that's a summary of the question.
Ooh, that is a good question. And it's a hard one to answer without knowing really specific examples of what's going on. I think that doing the very best job you can do is the most important thing. That it may take time to win over a person who doesn't value your work, or maybe doesn't value what's involved in your work. It's not, it can be not the individual per se, but that the person just doesn't think that particular program or that particular job is all that important. So he or she dismisses the person who's holding that position. In that case, if it seems to be more the nature of the position, I think maybe trying to expand the role of the position, thinking creatively about how to connect it to some other things that are going on. That I'm being very vague about that, because I'm not sure how to couch it within a particular situation. It can be very hard to change another person's perspective. And there is a point, and I was at a point at one juncture of my career where I felt disrespected. And I kind of realized that even though I was in an administrative position, there was an administrator above me. And I thought, who's going to win every fight? Because we disagreed on so many things. Who's going to win? It's the administrator above me. And so I had to make a decision to move into something different. And sometimes it does reach that point. That's not necessarily the worst thing that can happen to you. It may turn out to be the best thing that happens. I hope that helps a little bit.
I know during your time here, you've probably seen just a lot of different situations where, situations like that where people had to work through whether it's differences in style or differences in communication or just differences personally. But to sort of follow up on that, what is maybe um, what is a good strategy or piece of advice for managing that? And I think maybe you alluded to it, but managing just sort of the personal impact it has on you to go to work and to be working with someone that makes you maybe feel less valued than you would like to.
I think finding other people who feel the same way, not necessarily in that same unit, but who are going through something similar, can help, because you have people who say, I know what you mean. Yeah, and you kind of have that support. I remember, I think it's been long enough ago that I can tell this story. I remember being one of the few female administrators in student affairs way back when I was involved with the Learning Center. And we would meet, all of the directors would meet with the vice president on a pretty regular basis. So one day I found out that a decision had been made, something that we had discussed in a meeting, and I asked about it a week or two later, and the vice president said, "Oh, well, we already decided about that." And I said, "Well, I was in the meeting. I don't remember that." And I said, where was it decided? And he goes, "Oh, sorry, it was in the locker room." And so there was this kind of exclusion going on that was not even maybe on a conscious level by some of the leaders at that time. And it may still happen today, just not on a conscious level, but they get together with other administrator friends and they make a decision leaving out some of the people who should be involved. And I don't want people to rush. I don't want to suggest that people rush to escalate issues, but I think people should watch and see if situations, the same situation, like if that had arisen over and over and over again, I would have done something about it. I would have reported it. It was only that once, but I still remember it. It's just like, okay, you guys were in the locker room and the three women were not there and you guys made a decision and it made me angry.
Do we have other questions? Oh, we've got one here. What qualities or characteristics usually serve a leader best?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think being humble, being sure to recognize that it's not that one person who is accomplished. When success is achieved, it's not that one person, it's a whole team of people. And I think good leaders recognize that and are very public about it. I think also, and I had a person tell me once that I was too quick to apologize for things. And I kind of am. Sometimes I know the blame for something that happened was shared by not just me, but some other folks. But I always tended to apologize. But I feel that that's important. I think leaders who always find an excuse for what's gone wrong or point the finger elsewhere really aren't very good leaders and not very good role models. So knowing when to say, I messed up, or this didn't go well, or I didn't communicate this effectively. I think that shows people that you're human, that you can admit mistakes, and that you can move forward and try not to do the same thing again. One other thing, this is sort of tangential, but if you wind up in an organization like I did, an organization called Murray State, which was a big, complex organization, but where there's movement, promotions, changes in positions that are possible. So you're within this organization, but within it, you want to move up or move to other positions. Sometimes you may not get that position that you want. You may not get that promotion. And I say, hold your head up and keep doing your job and support the person who did get the position or who did get the promotion. That may come back, that kind of behavior, because it did happen to me. That kind of behavior can bring fabulous results. People who, and I was one of these too, people who lose out on a promotion or a position and complain and say, well, she wasn't really qualified, or he shouldn't have got it, or they just got it because of this or that. That makes you sound childish, and it makes you sound like not the kind of person you want to have in a leadership position. So hold your head up. Say those things at home, say those things to your best friend, but don't say them in the workplace, because if you maintain your composure and you stay positive, it's going to pay off big time.
That's good advice. Good advice. Any other questions?
I have a feeling that when this ends, I'm going to 10 minutes later go, why didn't I say that? Why didn't I mention?
Yes. I feel that often. Well, I think that is going to wrap up our questions. But I want to thank you for giving us a wonderful way to kick off Women's History Month, a wonderful way to celebrate International Women's Day. I so enjoy getting to hear about the experiences of people who have done all the things, have been there and have worked through some of the challenges that I think a lot of us experience in our current roles and for the students will experience one day. And I think that it's just super helpful and important to hear someone else say, I experienced that, I've been there. I may have accomplished all these things, but it wasn't, without challenge or without struggle. And I think that inspires people to take those chances and those opportunities. So is there anything you'd like to say before we end today? Any last parting thoughts?
Oh, goodness. Only that all of you, or I assume most folks listening or participating in this, are already leaders, and you're probably already doing great work. And I hope that you will mentor others, undergraduate students, colleagues, because I was mentored by some really great people. And I wasn't even quite aware that I was being mentored at the time. It was just, as I said at the beginning, it was sometimes those encouraging words that they spoke to me. It was their belief in me. And I think everyone participating in this you all probably have people who look up to you and want to emulate the things that you do. So take that on, enjoy it, because it can make such a difference for a long, long time. Some of my mentors are from the 1970s and 80s, and I still think about them. I still admire them. And some are gone, some have died. And they were part of my life and a very important part of my life. So keep helping folks with leadership. And thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Casey. Casey helped to get everybody together today, and I always love working with housing. So thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Higginson, again, and for everybody that made time to be with us today.
Hey,
oh,
and I want to say something
okay.
before we leave, because of course I'm the new college head, just a couple of minutes in, but I wanted to give flowers while I could. Dr. Higginson was one of the first people that emailed back to me, congratulations, and offer any assistance in the position that she had previously held. I didn't know it was that many years ago that you had done it, but I wanted to publicly say thank you. I know I responded to you in the email, but she
yes,
is
you did.
continuing to back mentor people that she doesn't know she's mentoring, so to speak. And again, a lot of people have been so helpful that are on here. Judy's been great. Chris has been great. Cass, everybody's been great. But I just remember she was one of the very first emails that I received back after the announcement was made. So
thank you for saying that, Regina. And the fact that you said that reminded me that this is my last piece of advice. Sometimes you think you're going into a position and you think, gosh, I know all about that. You know, I know all about the residential colleges, and that's going to be a really easy, and I love students, and that's going to be an easy transition for me. And then you discover how much there is to learn and all the things you didn't know. But that's what makes it fun, and you always learn something that you didn't expect to learn that you can use later on. So I'm glad you all are college heads. It's a wonderful experience.
That remains to be seen so far, but yes, I can see everybody else is thoroughly enjoying it. So I'm looking for my enjoyment moment to come.
You'll get there.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here today, and go enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.